Just to go back to the very beginning, I am Dr. Masuda. I am a naturopathic doctor here at Joy Wellness Partners, and today we're going to be talking about peptides, specifically peptide therapy for weight loss. I think there's been such a huge boom in these weight loss peptides, certain ones in particular, which I will go over, but I'm also going to go over some other ones that maybe aren't so commonly known or that they also have, similar effects. So we'll be talking about those, really just understanding what they are, how they work, um, how we can get them to work to the best of our ability so that they work really well, they work safely, and you get sustainable results. And we'll also talk a little bit about, contraindications, who this is for, who this is not for, and to make sure that, you are getting the best product possible, and getting the best results and the safest results. So all that being said, let's get started. Um, okay, so first of all, what are peptides? I mean, basically, if you think about back into chemistry class from high school, we talked about amino acids, right? When you build those blocks together, those amino acids, they're like building blocks. When you put them together, they make these short chains. Those are known as peptides. Then when you put those peptides together, you get proteins. So peptides are these little ones that are in the middle, and they act basically like tiny little messengers. They play a huge number of roles in our body to keep things functioning correctly. And they're really involved in almost every single system in our body. So they act as messengers. They communicate. They're communicating between cells and different systems. They help with tissue repair. So they're helping with wound healing. They can even reduce inflammation. They help with immune function. So some of these actual peptides are crucial for your immune system to fight off certain infections. They play a role in growth and development, how our cells grow and develop. They play a role in metabolism, how our body breaks down food and uses energy. And then obviously they play a role in appetite and weight regulation. So they're really just like complex little machines with many parts. That's a protein, complex machine. And the peptides are like the specific tools or instructions that help those machines work smoothly. So they're very important, basically, is what I'm here to say. Small but mighty. Oh, and throughout this, there's obviously AI images used in here, and I'm going to point out some of the funny ones because I have to. First of all, can we just talk about the ponytail that this guy has, this doctor? I don't know why they decided that this doctor needed a party in the back with that ponytail, but I'm so glad they did because it just adds to my presentation. Um, okay, so what is peptide therapy? So your body's already making its own peptides for all the different jobs, like I talked about, sending the signals, helping with healing. What peptide therapy is it's introducing like an additional or maybe modified peptide into your body to target specific processes, to really like help these processes along or sometimes enhance them or correct them. So really, instead of just relying only on what your body is producing, the peptide therapy is kind of like they come in as little helpers. Um, so for example, for the purpose of today's talk, if is a certain natural peptide or hormone that helps to regulate appetite, and it's just not working as effectively as it could, you're not producing as much, which is the case with a lot of people, peptide therapy can help by enhancing that action. So, and then also just to point out, I mean, with peptide therapy, there is, and I always say this to everyone I meet, there is, at any ailment you come in with, there is a peptide out there that could possibly help. There's some kind of peptide that we could add on. Now, we need to understand exactly how the peptides work, how they work with each other, how they would work with other medications and supplements. So I always recommend to do this under medical supervision. I know that they are there online for people, anyone to get, but it doesn't always mean that it's a good idea. I definitely have met people who are on multiple ones that actually do the same thing, and it's skyrocketing one of their levels. So tons of great peptides out there, very useful therapy, but definitely make sure that you're using them under medical supervision, and then you can get a customized treatment plan, something that's going to work specifically for you for your goals. All right, so why is peptide therapy so I guess popular right now? I think as we all know, obesity and weight has been something that we've been struggling with for a long time. There's always different medications, different fad diets, different things that people are trying to lose weight, not just for aesthetic purposes, but also for long-term health purposes. So I think when something comes on the market or something comes into the public eye that is effective, it's always going to become very, very popular. These have been around for a little while, but the fact that they have become so popular, there's obviously more research is going to be put into something that is very popular, that people are using, that people are paying for. It's just kind of how pharmaceutical and different kind of research like that happens. So we have seen that there's this proven effectiveness of, for example, the GLP-1s that we will talk about. There's all this research now showing that there are other targeted pathways that we can access with these peptides to help with weight loss. And so not just targeting one area, but we can target a few areas like appetite regulation. We can target metabolism. We can target fat storage. So that's why, again, why they're very popular. Some of these have fewer side effects than some of the other medications that have been on the market before. Um, we're starting to understand more the importance of hormones in these types of therapies and hormonal regulation and how that affects our weight too. Um, and of course, like I said, anytime there is something that is shown to be very successful, we're going to have more and more research, more scientific advances in it, and we just get a better understanding. Okay, so just a quick little history lesson. I promise I won't make this too long or boring. I used to not like history, but now I love it. But yeah, history of peptide therapy. Excuse me. So peptide therapy is obviously like very popular right now. For all the reasons I just talked about. But the actual first major breakthrough came in the 1920s when they isolated insulin. So in order to treat diabetes, which was huge, it was a huge, huge breakthrough. Then in the 1950s, we had the first scientists create synthetic peptides like oxytocin and vasopressin. And then, now we've had this resurgence in interest just because of all the different peptide functions that we now know about. All the continuing research helps us to understand, wow, these little peptides can do all these different things. And they potentially have fewer side effects than traditional drugs. So, we are always thinking of, what can we do that is going to help treat, help us feel better, help us live longer, do better, live optimally in that time with fewer side effects. So yes, peptide, we've known about peptides for a very long time. They've been isolating them and then synthesizing them for a while as well. So basically, no, this is not a new therapy. Okay, so let's get into some of the keys. This is about weight loss, peptide therapy for weight loss. So let's get into some of the key weight loss peptides. There are a bunch of them out on the market. Some of them are FDA approved for weight loss. Some of them are FDA approved for just diabetes. A lot of them are being used off-label, both in conventional medical practices and elsewhere. There is the brand names that most people are going to know about, like Ozempic, which would be semaglutide, Wegovy, which is also semaglutide, Rybelsus, which would be the oral version. And then we have things like Tirzepatide, which is the actual peptide, also known as Mounjaro and Zepbound. So there's a few different peptides that are either a GLP-1 or both a GLP-1 and GIP. So I'll explain what those are. So these are basically two natural gut hormones. We make them in our gut. GIP stands for gastric inhibitory polypeptide, and GLP-1, which is the one that we commonly know, which they basically, what they do, they help our bodies manage blood sugar and process food after we eat. So we eat, triggers the release of these hormones. They then go release insulin, and they protect insulin producing cells. And they can also have other effects like protecting bone health, which is the GIP. They can also aid in weight loss, obviously, like the GLP-1s. And because these hormones tend to break down quickly, so they tend to break down quickly. And some people we've seen now that they just don't actually produce as much. When you don't produce as much, you're not feeling as satiated. You're still feeling kind of hungry, even though you've just eaten. And that's part of part of what it does. It helps with, when these release, they help with that satiety, like, oh, I feel full. I don't need to keep eating. They help with our blood sugar control in a couple different ways. Insulin, glucagon, again, well, I guess physiology, biochemistry lesson. So they help with the release of those or reducing the release of one of them. And they again help with protecting those insulin producing cells. And that's why it's helpful for type 2 diabetes. So really, because we've seen that these gut hormones break down kind of quickly, because we've seen that some people don't produce as much, it made sense to produce a peptide that will mimic these, that they can go in and do exactly what these gut hormones are supposed to do. And so what they do is they harness the body's own system for managing energy and blood sugar. So yeah, like I mentioned a few of them here: semaglutide, Tirzepatide. Those would be two, I feel like they're the most commonly used. Liraglutide is another one on here that it does require daily injections, so probably why it's not as popular. Retatrutide is another one. I cannot say that. Retatrutide. Why do they have to be so difficult? But anyway, these are some of the most common ones out in the market, and these are the key weight loss peptides that we're going to talk about. I am going to mention a few other ones though. Okay, so beyond GLP-1s and GIPs, there are other, I wouldn't call them just weight loss peptides because they do other things, but they can be used to assist with weight loss. Now, again, this is why it's really important to find a practitioner who understands what your goals are, you know, what your diet, what your lifestyle is like, because this is really important to figuring out, okay, what is going to be the best for you. So one of the groups of peptides would be the growth hormone or growth hormone releasing peptides. And one example of that would be this CJC 1295 and ipamorelin. So they go well together. So this one has been used off-label to increase lean muscle mass and reduce body fat. Now, these do not act in the same way as the GLP-1s and the GIPs. So these ones are going to be helping to stimulate the release of growth hormone, something that we naturally produce. We produce a lot of it, you know, in our late teens, early 20s. If you remember, like if you ever hurt yourself, you're going to heal very quickly. Versus as we get older, injuries take longer to heal. And that's because we do have a reduction in growth hormone. And so we do want a certain amount of growth hormone still as we get older. The range, the typical range does get a little bit lower as we get older, but there is still optimal levels within there that you want to have so that you can recover well, you can gain lean muscle mass, and you can heal from injury. So, so one of the ways that it works is, like I said, releasing growth hormone. It can also promote something called lipolysis, which is fat breakdown, and a reduction of visceral fat, which is the fat around your organs, which is very important. So this is another one that it can be used. Again, it depends on the goals, it depends on the person, maybe if they're not a candidate for the GLP-1s, which I will talk about. Another one here is called AOD 9604. And this is actually a synthetic peptide fragment of human growth hormone. So it's not the full, it's not growth hormone, just like the last one I talked about was not actually growth hormone. It's actually getting you to produce more of your own growth hormone. So AOD 9604 is just a fragment of human growth hormone. And again, this one is also purported to stimulate that fat breakdown, that lipolysis, and also to inhibit something called lipogenesis, which is fat storage. We want to inhibit fat storage. And this is without the growth promoting effects of full-on growth hormone. So growth hormone, like I mentioned, it is wonderful. We don't want to overdo it. I don't know how many of you follow UFC or know of someone called Conor McGregor, but I always use him as an example because he's clearly on something, likely growth hormone, because your head just doesn't get bigger like that without something like growth hormone. So that's not what we're trying to achieve. We're trying to achieve just enough, again, to help with fat breakdown, reduce fat storage, and also help with the growth hormone effects of healing and lean muscle mass. And then another one called MOTS-c,
Guys could
which
think
full name is mitochondrial open reading frame of the 125 rRNA type C. Again, much easier as MOTS-c. So this one has been around for a long time. A lot of peptide doctors do love this one. It does have some potential benefits for metabolic health. And it's actually been observed to be lower in people who are obese. So it goes to stand, you would think, okay, well, if it is lower in people who are obese, maybe increasing it is going to help with that issue. So it helps to regulate cellular energy, basically energy balance in your cells. I'm sorry. It can also improve insulin sensitivity and glucose metabolism. So again, when we're supporting lower blood sugar levels, supporting, good insulin sensitivity, these are all things that can help. Again, why why the other ones are used for type 2 diabetes, and helpful for weight loss. So really the way the MOTS-c works is playing a role in energy metabolism. So again, other options, not always something that everyone wants to use. Sometimes people want to go directly for the GLP-1, but sometimes they're not a candidate. So there are other options when it comes to weight loss and peptides. Okay. So what are some, again, I got to look at this AI image. Look at this handsome doctor and this handsome patient. They look like they could be brothers. They actually look like they could be twins. Okay, so some safety considerations when you're thinking about peptide therapy. So of course, again, these are generally well tolerated. This is why you want it to be under medical supervision. So we know, okay, hey, what medications are you already on? What supplements are you already taking? What's your personal medical history? What is your family history? We need to know these things so we can make a good clinical decision for what peptide is going to work the best for you and what's going to be the safest for you. Um, the let's see. The other thing is that you do want to continue to have monitoring. You don't want to just go on one and then just stay on one. For a lot of these peptides, we actually cycle them. So for example, with the growth hormone agonists, we're going to cycle the peptides, meaning we're not going to use them every single day. We're also not going to use them just for months and months on end. We're going to maybe use them 5 out of 7 days per week. We're also going to then maybe do them for 2 to 3 months and take a 6-week break. We want to make sure that we're not just overwhelming your system or getting your system to just kind of be lazy and be like, well, she's taken it, we don't have to produce it anymore because your body does produce a lot of these peptides naturally. So we don't want that to happen. We want to keep receptors sensitive. And, again, just to go back to the medical supervision, there are potential side effects to, of course, anything that you take, there is a potential side effect. So we want to make sure that we are monitoring those, that we're making sure that the side effects should not be outweighing the benefits. And just to go through, like I said, we were talking mostly about these GLP-1 and GIP peptides. Some of the most common side effects would be, maybe some nausea, sometimes, some vomiting, some gut dysfunction, like gut, a little bit of like maybe diarrhea, constipation. Sometimes people get indigestion, fatigue. Those are some of the more mild side effects that people might have. And I always tell my patients, like, the goal is not to be feeling like this all the time. If you are, we're going to change the dosage. And that is a nice thing about a lot of these peptides when we're able to really adjust the dosage specifically for you. There are, of course, some less common, but potentially more serious side effects. Some of these were found in just a few humans, and others were found only in animal studies. For example, we're always going to make sure that we have checked with you, whether you do have any history of certain thyroid cancers, certain endocrine neoplasias, which I always say if I ask somebody and they're like, what is that? Then you probably haven't had it, but it's something that we want to check before we start any of these GLP-1 peptides. We want to talk about history of pancreatitis. We want to talk about, any history of like gallbladder issues. And though these don't like rule it out for everybody, we want to know this history. We want to know, okay, what do we need to watch out for? What do we need to check for before we start? Or is there anything that we want to do before we start so that you have the best experience on it? Okay. Yeah, so basically, all these peptide therapies, they can be very effective for weight loss and they can be, safe and effective. But again, you want to make sure that there is someone who is holding your hand through the process. They understand what to look out for, so that you have the best experience on them. Okay. So, again, I went over a little bit of this on the last slide, but how do we determine who is a candidate for peptide therapy? So first, we are going to, we want to do an in-depth intake so we can understand again all those things I just mentioned. Do you have a history of any of these things? Do you have a family history of any of these things? What are you currently taking? Medications, supplements, and then we want to do some labs. There are certain labs that we need to look at to make sure that you have good kidney and liver function. We want to look at your blood sugar levels first. Maybe your weight gain is not actually an issue with your blood sugar. Maybe it is something else. Maybe it is more inflammatory. And that's something we can discuss and figure out another option. We want to look at your thyroid because your thyroid hormones can play a really big role in one, why maybe you have had some weight gain or some trouble losing weight. And then also, again, we want to check for any history of certain cancers. And then, we want to also look at your sex hormones too. Again, another piece of the puzzle that can potentially lead to weight gain. And if we're just treating one area, if we think, okay, we'll just give the GLP-1 and we're not supporting other areas, you're not going to have one as good of an outcome or as good of an experience. Like I said, we want to identify contraindications, like I mentioned, and look at the other issues that could be leading to potential weight gain. It's all about the big picture. Okay. Another thing I just want to talk about quickly, because I do know, fully aware that, a lot of these peptides are just accessible to people online without any kind of prescription, without any kind of chat with a doctor. I think I've probably already gone through this, but, why is it important to talk with a medical professional before you get these peptides? One, all those things I just mentioned, want to make sure that there's no contraindications. Two, just like, are these appropriate for you? Are you on some that are doing the exact same thing and you're just kind of doubling up on it? It's not necessary. You're going to be spending unnecessary money for that. Okay. Yes, and also you want to make sure that you're getting it from a quality source. We have access to everything online these days, which can be great sometimes when I'm running behind on a birthday present for someone and I can just Amazon Prime it to my door that day. It's wonderful. But having access to everything online is not always great because we don't know exactly where it's coming from. You want to make sure you're getting it from somewhere who they know where they're getting it from. They can offer certificates of purity, so we know how pure this peptide is, so they do constant checks. And then, again, it's about a personalized plan. There's no point in being on multiple peptides if you don't need to be. Again, you're spending unnecessary money. You're kind of putting things into your body that you don't need to. You want to come up with a plan that's going to be the best for you. And then, yeah, lastly, when you seek a medical professional, we do this all the time. I'm able to go through exactly how the peptide works, how it doesn't work, what possible side effects there are, what we're looking out for, what we're hoping to achieve. And so that you can then give me informed consent to start this peptide. When we're doing things online, not seeking that oversight or that consideration, you just don't get that. So you don't know what the outcome's going to be. So I don't know if any of you on here have seen me in person, but I do have some non-negotiables when it comes to these using any kind of weight loss peptide, because like anything we do, whether it comes to, hormone replacement therapy, we're doing some testosterone, or we're taking certain supplements, or we are using some peptides, it's not going to work, or it's not going to work as well if we're not putting in the extra work, which is the hardest part. I know it's way easier to take a supplement, to inject a peptide, maybe to get a pellet. The hard work is, focusing on your diet and your exercise and your lifestyle. Those are the hardest things to change, and I understand that. They are some of the most important things, though. So I do have some non-negotiables when it comes to, using these peptides if you want to have optimal results. And I want you to have optimal results and sustainable results even after you stop using them. And this is really important, especially for the GLP-1 peptides. When you're on any type of restrictive diet, anything is going to cause fast weight loss. One, you do have more of a tendency to put a strain on your pancreas, which is, I talked before about pancreatitis. And then two, it's not sustainable. We've seen this time and time again with all different types of crash diets. When you cut so many things out, it's not sustainable and it's not also enjoyable. So the goal is with any of these peptides, but especially the GLP-1s, where it is kind of reducing your appetite, kind of reducing the food noise is how I like to call it. We want you to still be hungry. You still be eating because you need to get the nutrients in. You need to get nutrients in because even though, say, if you're not eating and you're losing weight fast, not only is that a strain on your pancreas, but down the line, if you're not getting certain nutrients in, you're going to have other issues. You're going to be coming back saying, why is my hair falling out? Why am I so tired? You need these nutrients because there are cofactors for so many different processes in our bodies. So really important that you are still eating. Maybe we don't need as full of a portion, okay? Or maybe we're not having those cravings for certain snacks late at night, which is great. So that is really important. Like that is how we want it to go. We don't want to be losing massive amounts of weight very quickly with any kind of diet or protocol. 1-2 pounds maximum per week. Again, so this can be sustainable. So my non-negotiables when it comes to these peptides is one, you need to be having protein and fiber with every meal. Protein because one, it is very satiating. And I talked about this before. This is, and I think you've probably all experienced this. If you're really, really hungry and you just want to go and grab that simple carbohydrate because it's just going to taste good and it's going to just make you happy real quick. Well, that's the thing. It makes you happy real quick and then you crash because your blood sugar goes up and then it goes down. Protein is going to keep you full for longer. And so again, this is going to be really important when you are not only for that, but also because we want to make sure that you are giving yourself enough of the building blocks to maintain, if not gain, muscle mass. And that is important because the more muscle that you have on your body, usually the better metabolically you are, metabolic health. Metabolically healthy, there we go. And actually, the more muscle you have, the more calories you burn just at rest. And I'll go through that in just a minute. And so we want to make sure that we're keeping you in the best metabolic position possible. We don't want you to just lose a bunch of fat, lose a bunch of muscle, and then you stop taking the GLP-1, you're like, well, I'm hungry again, and now I'm gaining more fat. Well, now we're in a worse position than when we started because you've gained more fat, but your muscle has gone down from what it was before. So the goal is to maintain, if not gain, muscle mass, and you need protein to feed into that. The other thing is fiber. Also helps with feeling satiated, feeling full. Basically it helps to promote fullness. It helps to regulate blood sugar. So for example, that's why we talk about, hey, if you have the option between the whole fruit and a juice, the whole fruit is going to be better because you're getting the fiber in there too. And so that's going to slow down how fast the sugar in the fruit hits your system. We don't want big glucose spikes. We want kind of like rolling, gently rolling hills. So not only that, it's also going to help with your digestive system. One of the possible side effects of the GLP-1s is that constipation, kind of slowing down of gastric emptying. So you want to make sure that you're getting in fiber, drinking enough water to go with that fiber so you're not just stopping everything up, because it also feeds into a healthy microbiome. That is one of the things that, we've seen an uptick in colon cancer in younger people because we're not actually getting enough fiber in. So really, really important to get that fiber in. So important while you're on the GLP-1 and then important to get into that habit while you're taking that peptide so that if you do eventually come off it, you know that when you start to feel a bit more hungry, okay, I'm going to reach for protein and fiber because that's going to keep me full for longer. And you're going to be able to sustain the weight loss for longer. And the last thing is weightlifting. I know, I'm not saying you have to go to a big muscle gym where they're all staring at their muscles in the mirrors and, they're all on steroids. You don't have to do that. Some kind of resistance training, something where you're going to be, lifting, heavier and heavier weights. And that looks different for everybody. We're all starting at a different position. But again, I already spoke about why muscle mass is important, and this is how you're going to do it. I love Pilates. I love yoga. I love all the high intensity stuff, but also having weightlifting as part, like 3 days a week. is my non-negotiable. Because we're building lean muscle, we're increasing calorie expenditure. Like I mentioned, the more muscle you have, it increases your metabolic rate so that when you're just at rest, you're still burning more calories, the more muscle you have. So, and the goal, like, again, as well, is like we want to see a shift in body composition when we're doing these weight loss peptides. I don't want to just see, hey, like, yeah, I'm just the weight, my weight is going down. Maybe it is, but the goal really is to see a shift in your body composition. Yes, I want to see a little bit less fat and a little bit more muscle. So that is the goal there. And like the top of the pyramid, you see, that's when you get the sustainable results, and long-term weight management. Okay, so I might have gone a little bit over, but I know I had some technical difficulties at the beginning. Really, this is, the summary of what we talked about today. What are peptides? We talked about how they're just short chains of amino acids. They help with communication, they help with healing, they help with metabolism. And peptide therapy is really utilizing, what your body already has and just helping to enhance it or helping to increase the amount that you have in your body. This picture is cracking me up too, because it looks like this guy went from taking a GLP-1 and he was overweight and now he's a woman. I don't understand AI sometimes, but I think the goal there is to show that, he has maybe not a great diet and he's taking a GLP-1, he's reduced how much he's eating, he's lost weight. I don't know why he became a woman. Or maybe he just shaved his beard. I don't know. But yeah, GLP-1 agonists, very, very popular right now. We've seen there's every single day I get an update on more research, and for the most part, it's all been very, very positive. I see it help with inflammation. You are able to microdose it. When you are using it with like a compounding pharmacy, you're able to microdose it. You're able to find a dose that's right for you. So yeah, that's why they've been very popular. These different types of peptides, from the GLP-1s to the growth hormone agonists, all of them can help with not only satiety, like feeling satiated, but also helping with gaining lean muscle mass. Of course, these are not magic bullets. Like I said, like with any type of therapy, you want to make sure that you are supporting it with diet and lifestyle, or they're not going to work as well as they could. And why waste your money, right? We talked about some of the potential side effects. And again, the goal is not to be just, wow, like I'm losing weight because I'm so nauseous I can't eat. That's not the goal. That's not where we want to be. It's just there to support. And, we want to reduce those side effects as much as possible. And then lastly, like I'd already talked about the lifestyle factors, these are the most important. And having that baseline already set up for, okay, I'm just going to use these peptides to help support me through this. I've already got this kind of baseline of, my diet, I've got my protein and fiber, I'm lifting weights, I'm exercising, I have a healthy relationship with food. This is just to help support and help, kind of nudge you if you need to get over a little hump. Okay, so, if you are considering weight loss peptides of any kind, whether it be one of the growth hormone agonists, whether it be one of the GLP-1s that are, really popular, the first step would be to schedule a consultation. You want to talk to a qualified medical professional, just like us here, and we'll go through a history to see, okay, what has led you to this point? What do we think is going to be the most helpful for you? And again, that looks different for everybody. We will look at lab work to make sure, okay, one, are you a candidate for certain ones? Is there something else that's coming up in your lab work that is, easy to support? It's like, well, hey, maybe you have a hypothyroidism, maybe low thyroid, and this is really contributing to your difficulty losing weight. That is something that we can support. Doesn't mean that you're not a candidate for other things, but that we'll want to support that at the same time. So again, you can have the best experience possible. You'll receive a personalized treatment plan. So again, not everybody's on the same dose. Not everybody needs the same dose. And that's the beauty of, this type of medicine is that we see you as individuals. Everyone is an individual with their own needs. So you'll get a personalized plan. And then you want to make sure that you're getting follow-ups. And that's something that we do. We follow up to make sure, hey, is this dose right for you? How are you feeling? Do you have any symptoms that you want to talk about? Or we're doing follow-up blood work to make sure that you are still a candidate, that some levels are going in the right direction. All these steps are really important in order to make sure that you have the best experience with these peptides. So That being said, that is the end of my presentation. Okay, so someone asked, what's the length of time that people can be on low dose on these for longevity? So again, there are, depending on the peptide, right? If we're talking about the GLP-1s, the research shows, people are on these long-term anyway for type 2 diabetes. So if you are microdosing it, that's even, that's different. They've shown that you can be on these long-term. Microdosing is also something that, makes it so you can be on it even longer, especially if it's not just for type 2 diabetes. You just want to make sure that you are continuing to monitor your labs for that time to make sure, again, that you're still a candidate, that you still can continue to do this. I did have another question. Are peptides similar to what has been called compounds to replace meds like Ozempic? So that encompasses many different things. So I've heard people be like, oh, berberine, it's nature's Ozempic. That is a compound that's found in Oregon, like barberry root and Oregon grape. And it does help with, it doesn't act like a GLP-1. It does help with reducing blood sugar. So I think that's why it probably did help some people with weight loss, but it doesn't help everybody because that's not everybody's issue. There are other supplements, like for example, there's something called Calocurb. They came at this, it's from New Zealand, I believe they synthesized this. Also is supposed to help with reducing appetite, and increasing satiety. So there are lots of different things that could potentially replace medications like Ozempic, but they're not acting the same way. So Ozempic, which is semaglutide, is a GLP-1 medication, and it acts exactly like I mentioned, like how GLP-1s act. There are other peptides, other supplements that act in a different way, but could also support weight loss. Also, someone asked, is it necessary to be on this for life? No, not for everybody. Again, this is where individualized treatment comes in. So yes, if you are on this for your type 2 diabetes and you are also losing weight on the same time because of it, you might need to be on this for life. For other people, for example, I have some people with chronic illnesses like chronic inflammatory issues where they're microdosing it, and they're probably going to microdose this for a very long time. I would never say it's necessary to be on this for life unless this this is your type 2 diabetes medication. Because we change, maybe at some point your diet, your lifestyle changes and you no longer really need this support anymore. So if this is a support for you, not necessarily. What happens when you go off peptides? Do most patients gain the weight back? So depends on the peptide, right? If we're talking about say the growth hormone agonists and the AOD and the MOTS-c, they're not acting on as an appetite suppressant. They're not acting so much on your appetite. So they are going to, there's not so much of a rebound appetite when you come off of it. The GLP-1s, yes, a lot of people will notice, okay, my appetite has come back. And that's why, yes, when you don't have a good baseline in terms of your diet, your exercise, kind of just already dialed in, when you do come off it, it might be hard because you're like, okay, well, I'm hungry again and I don't know what to eat. And so you might put weight back on. So that's why I stress the importance of having those okay, I'm getting enough protein and fiber in all the time. I'm exercising, having those in place already so that when you do come off and you do notice, hey, my appetite's come back a little bit. Okay, I know what I need to do in order to feel full for longer. I'm going to have some more protein and fiber, less carbohydrates. And to help you through that transition. And as well, that's where some of the other compounds that come in, like say, some of the berberine, if that is appropriate for you, or some of the other supplements maybe that aren't as strong, that can help you through that transition. If you have any more questions, anything that we can answer, please feel free to give us a call. We're always happy to talk to you about it, and get things started and see what's going to be the right path for you. And thank you for listening.
Thanks for watching. I'm Carol Joy Bender, the founder and nurse practitioner at Joy Wellness Partners. If you found this video helpful, give us a thumbs up. Please subscribe also to our channel and share this video with someone who you think could benefit from it. You can also learn more information about these services by clicking our link in the description below. You can also leave a comment to let us know what content you'd like us to put out next week. Thank you so much for being a part of our community, and stay along with us for enhancing wellness in our world. See you next week.